Hello, welcome along to BAASS Connect 2021 and another of their virtual sessions. I'm David Beard. I'm the CRM principal for Sage CRM, and today I'm going to talk to you about the hidden treasures inside Sage CRM, or otherwise titled, What Else Can Sage CRM Do For Me? It's an exploration of the Sage CRM features. So we're hoping that you'll get something from this. Perhaps you're using Sage CRM to manage your relationships. Great, but maybe there are a few things you're missing out on. Some key features that perhaps you didn't know about, or perhaps you'd like to do more with to improve your productivity and results. So I'll be taking you through those advanced features today, perhaps new to you, and I hope you can put them into action. Let's make a start. Here's what I'll be focusing on. I want to look at dashboards and gadgets, notifications and workflows, the email manager, and some tech stuff beyond configuration, where you can really get into programming the product to do even more than you perhaps thought. So let's get on with it. First of all, dashboards and gadgets. What's that all about? Well, if I look inside the product, I've logged on here as a typical user, and I'm using a standard installation of Sage CRM that's got some demonstration data in it. And you can see this is what we call a default welcome dashboard. It contains gadgets. These display custom web pages, information from other parts of the system, and so on. But as you can see, users can be assigned other dashboards too. If you look at that drop down, they've either been created for them or they created their own and look after them themselves. So I've just switched to a salesperson type view, and this might be an example dashboard that they have. A set of data containing gadgets, each displaying different types of data that are relevant to them. So on the first row, you see you've got a list gadget, a calendar gadget, and chart gadget. And these can be moved around to be in different places on the screen. They can also take different sorts of data. So the gadgets also interact with each other, and some have features that allow you to work directly within the dashboard rather than having to go from one part of the system to another. It's all about efficiency. It's all about helping people do the job they need to do. For example, if I click on that button that's highlighted there in the list gadget, watch what happens, because it pops a box that allows me to interact directly with a specific record, that one I clicked on, to then choose to move the workflow on. And I'll be talking about workflow itself in a moment. So quickly and easily, someone can just click one of those three buttons there and move that particular workflow along. So that record is being worked on, moved on, and the user is back to getting on with the rest of their day. Dashboards are very flexible in layout. And if I switch to another view, you can see what I mean. They can be made longer, so stretched across the top panel of the screen. They can have different sorts of activities going on in them, pie charts, funnel charts, those sorts of things. It's like your own personal head-up display, whether you're in sales, perhaps in marketing, studying lead flow, perhaps you're in service, needing to look at the case flow through the business, either as a team lead or perhaps as an individual. It's really up to you what you do with these gadgets, and the team at BAASS can give you some great examples once they have a chat with you about what you're trying to achieve with your business processes to see how you can put this to use. There's inbuilt libraries as well, 12 gadget types in fact, and they represent standard sort of containers of information you can use, charts, lists, and all sorts of other objects. There's a lot more reading you can do online, and I'll point you to a few URLs towards the end of the presentation. And of course, the BAASS team will be able to talk to you about what they recommend. Okay, that's a quick fly through gadgets. Let's take a look at the concept of using CRM to prompt action and to move data about your company according to your own business rules. We're going to look at it in two ways. Notifications first, followed by workflow. Let's look at notifications. So back to my standard demo screen, and here's a user who's been notified, you can see in the top right corner, of an existing high priority cases that have been assigned to them. So they are a customer service type person. These notifications allow him or her to move very quickly to look at that individual case. One click, a bit like I did earlier from the dashboards, because they perhaps have been flagged as high attention, immediate action, something like that. And it's very easy for a super user or typically system administrator to set that up. So let me show you, again, very quickly, touching the sides, how that works. You do this in the system admin area. So if you head into the customization of the area of the product, don't worry if you haven't seen this before, but this is standard CRM stuff. And you specifically go into the cases area. And what you do to create an on-screen notification is you see there is a box highlighted there, a tab called notifications, where you set these up. And you can set up different sorts of fires. So you can have a on-screen notification, or you could have an email notification. Let me show you those two of those, how you set them up, what they look like. The on-screen notifications are set up just like this. The structure of the rule is such you can test fields, so you can test for conditions being achieved. So the example is, as I'm showing on the screen there, 2 values being checked. And if those 2 values are occurring together, an and, or together or separately, an or, then you can logically assess them and then fire the rule. And then you can see at the bottom, the messages that appear on screen can include HTML and all sorts of other fields as well. So you can get quite a nicely worded message that is fired up to that user. You can even pick up different fields from the database saying, what exactly do you want to show the particular user? Do you want a case number? Do you want the name of the person logging it? Whatever it might be. And you can have special values too, like make sure it's assigned user or account manager is referred to, whatever makes sense to your business rules. The other way of doing that, as I've alluded to, is an email notification that is handy if you've got users that are not in the system but need to be notified anyway. So you can fire the same sort of information out, but this time as an email. And you set it up in kind of much the same way. You test for a rule, you test for a logical condition, and then you have set up the email, which includes the fields, the case information, the person information, those sorts of things. And the idea is you get that in a nice format that is just then fired out the door to that particular user who needs to be notified to either maybe deal with it, or if they're an account manager, they're aware of what's going on. And you can even add other things like attachments, whatever makes sense to your business. Notifications and workflows are available across the different entities of the system. So there are 7 entities you can really run these across. Leads, if you're in marketing, opportunities if you're in sales, cases if you're in service, and a few others. So it's a very useful way of bringing things to people's attention when and if they need bringing attention to. Let's look at the workflow piece of these two because they are very much interrelated. I've gone back to my user view here, Graham Rogers, to see a list of his cases. And he's a service type person. You can see you've got an option on the right here to create a new case, that button you can see on the right hand side. Now you notice if I click on that button, a set of behaviors or business rules for this implementation of CRM have been invoked. This is a workflow in action. And you can see a number of fields are both available for me to set values, the ones that are in edit mode or open to putting data in, and some of them that have been preset. And these are the business rules that have been designed for this particular user. And you set these up in this area called workflow. Now, there's a lot more you can read about on help.sagecrm, on community.sagecrm, and of course, BAASS can talk to you as well. So this is very much a very quick overview of how you might do this. So imagine, if you like, creating a new version of an already existing workflow. So let's imagine I want to create something that kind of looks like this. You have a start state, and this is an opportunity that has passed through a lead state and into a qualification state. And there are various routes or alternatives that I can take with this particular activity. So here's how you start it. You start the creation of a new workflow by creating and clicking on the new button there called New Workflow. You then give it a name, make sure it's a useful name rather than the one I've got there. And then you create what we call a starting state. So this is where a process will kick off. And you can have as many of these states as you wish. The states represent stopping points on the journey. So it could be, in my sales example, a lead is created, it's qualified, it's sent to somebody, it's closed or lost or something like that, right? So you set up these states first and you just simply type them in and create as many as you need. Now, bear in mind, I'm sort of aiming for something like this, and I will zoom ahead because we've only got a few minutes today. But this is how you would design up a workflow and then create it in the system. So I've got my states. This is where the journey passes through. How do you make the journey happen? Well, you create what we call rules, and rules move you from each of these states from one to the other. Now, imagine I'm going to do these for you. I'll zoom ahead, but this is how you do them. Use the workflow tool, and this is the palette you've got, the tools you've got at your disposal to move between states using or creating these rules. So imagine I've done that. Here's one I prepared earlier. Clicking on the workflow button, in this case, it's showing new oppo. That was the name I kind of gave it, right? Click on that button there. It fires the workflow, and you'll see that I've got a mix of values appearing on screen there. One's available for me to play with, ones that perhaps have already been preset. It's really up to you, and you define all those using that palette I showed you on the previous screen. Workflows can be as simple, 3 steps, or as hard, 99 steps as you need. And BAASS will give you good advice about how best to strike the happy medium so that users don't feel as if they're being deluged with a need to capture information, but your business does capture the information when and where it needs to. So if I click the save, I'm back to there. So I filled in a few pieces of data, filled it all in, and then this is sort of the aim I'm going to, right? I've started at the top there. I'm going to end up towards the bottom. And there's all sorts of different things you can do and different rules you can apply and so forth. So have a read of the documentation on help.sagecrm.com and obviously speak to BAASS about what more they could do for your particular business. Let me talk to you about something else I think is woefully underused by a lot of our customers, but I think it's a fantastic tool, and that's the Email Manager. Email Manager in many ways is, well, a bit like workflow in concept in that it processes things according to certain rules. Now, this slightly mad-looking graphic I'm showing you right now is just showing you with the red box where the email management tool and service lives in the context of the CRM system. What does it do? Well, it's designed to process inbound emails according to certain rules. So what it means to you is you could have CRM monitor and manage generic boxes, email boxes. So, for example, an email box like help@yourcompanyname.com or service or info@yourcompanyname.com. And rather than having some poor person have to wade through the various junk mails and all sorts of things that typically end up in boxes like that, the CRM system can take care of it for you, and it can intelligently process the emails. It can move data, it can create records, it can respond to requests. Essentially, pretty much any of the objects in the system, creating cases, creating communications, sending emails, can be deployed or used by the email management service. Now, this is part of the product. It typically gets installed automatically, but you do have to then make it do something. And then making it do something is very much up to you, a bit like the workflow design. If I use this graphic here briefly to reinforce that point I made, a customer might send you an email, it's monitored by the email management engine, the email management service, and then it does something with that inbox. So it will pick up the email, it might scan through looking for keywords, it might look at the email address and check to see whether that exists, and then it assumes it's a known customer to you and perhaps does something with it. It could write a copy of the email, it could notify the account manager, whatever makes sense to you and your business. And it does this through the processing of script files. Now, you do need to have a bit more of an understanding of scripting and how it works, but it's fairly straightforward once you see a few examples. This is where you set it up in the system admin part of the system, and you associate various templates against various email boxes, info at, service at, sales at, whatever. You could, for example, have an inbound email filed automatically in CRM as a communication because it's notified or the email service has recognized the word case or service or incident or a part number or a customer number or something like that and tested it with the email as well to go, known customer, we need to create a case, whatever it might be. It could also have a reply that says, hey, thanks for your email. We'll be back in 48 hours according to our customer service agreement, whatever. You can do all that. You can create things. You can even ensure that if a customer has already logged a service incident with you, if they send another email, that the email management service automatically notices that and says, thanks for that. We've already got it. Here's your reference. By the way, we're working on it. Whatever, again, makes sense to your business. This is just one example of a typical script file. This is an opportunity that automatically creates a new record for a salesperson to follow up on. But it does show, I hope, even if you don't particularly follow script, how you can use the email management service along with these script templates to automatically do things. And the CRM system can look after that for you, create the records, and make sure that your business processes are slick and look good from a customer perspective. I wanted to look too at the whole idea of the application programming interfaces or APIs that are available to you with CRM. There's a whole object model behind the product, the way you create a record, the way you design a screen, the way you do things like that. And that is something you can deal with, you can pick up, you can use in a programming interface. Now, you do need to have a bit more design and admin and development skills behind you, but certainly BAASS will help you with that if you don't know already. But the point I want to make here is the application is very open. We give you a whole bunch of different ways of interacting with the core business objects of the product that we use when we write our own integrations to your back office systems. We use the same tool, but you could use two to talk to your own finance system. Perhaps you want to talk to other parts of other systems, shipping systems perhaps, to pull and push data back and forward. And you can do that through a number of different layers in the product. Simple metadata changes. For example, we've got this thing called a run block, which lets you represent data inside a CRM screen that looks just like CRM data, but may have actually come from somewhere else entirely. You could also use what we have, our own version of a sort of web services called S-Data, retrieval, extraction of data from typically accounting systems. But equally, you can extend that to what we call SOAP, full web services, that allow for complete create, read, update, delete interactions with data records in CRM. So you can pull and post information, change records, send information back out again. And you've got also, and particularly this is where people like BAASS and our partners really go to town with their own developments, the ability using the .NET API that allows you, developers, BAASS, you, etc., to create whole new screens, whole new data structures, whole new ways of working with the product, but thus does use the object model of Sage CRM so that you protect the data integrity, but also can do a lot more around this center of the universe that should be your CRM system. There are lots of ways of doing it. BAASS will be able to tell you more. You can read a whole lot more as well about the product, about what it does, what it makes available to you, and so on help.sagecrm.com and also developer.sagecrm.com. And BAASS, of course, will talk to you about it too. We provide as well, by the way, on some of our YouTube channels, some of our development partner sites, things like that, ideas and wizards where you can have a look at things that we've done that show you the way forward, that really unpack the way all these object models work and how you might put them to use in your own business. There are many dozens of YouTube videos to have a look at, so do have a look, and I'll refer to those in a second. Okay, by the way, this graphic here, as mad as it looks, is just giving you a feel for the way that we've got our core system in the center there, really. The foundation of the product design is such that we make sure we can interact and protect your data and give you all the screens you need to use in the core CRM system. But the same development and API approach lets you do similar looking things. So the end user perspective, they don't really understand or don't see the joins between the core and what you or BAASS might develop around the edges as well. It's all about fast and flexible configuration, a bit like you saw me designing notifications and workflows earlier, but also supports the concept of extending the design through these programming interfaces. And you can store all these, and they're kept separate from any upgrades as well, so you can take advantage of our new releases in the core without upsetting or destabilizing things that you've built around the edges or BAASS have built around the edges for you. By the way, speaking of APIs, we have another API called self-service. Self-service lets you interact with your own website and CRM. Why is that important? Well, imagine, if you will, you can allow known customers, as an example, to come to your website, log in securely, and access details, perhaps their case records, perhaps their address records, in a manner you choose, safe manner you choose, so that they can interact directly with your system and update or retrieve information straight from your website. Again, it's making efficiencies for you and your business and a great customer experience as well, I would hope. So if you'd like to learn more, community.sagecrm is really the jumping off point. There's a lot more you can see there. Our own internal resources, developer downloads, those sorts of things, but also access and jumping off points to Sage University, to developer.sagecrm.com, to our own help files, to all sorts of other things that exist both on this website and also around the world of Sage. So I hope that's useful information for you. Have a look around there, make yourself familiar, of course, with what's available, and then, of course, BAASS will be able to talk to you further about what's going on. But that's all for me today. I hope that's been useful. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the rest of the day.